Hey, and welcome back. So I hope you had an opportunity to try this out and create your own version of this. So next, what we need to do is we need to stringify this so that we can store it into our session storage. So there's a number of places that we can do this. We can do it within this event listener. We can do it within the form data. So maybe what we're going to do is we'll just keep the form data as it is, because what this is doing is this is a useful function that we can use in a number of other applications. So we can reuse this type of functionality where we're returning back our form information. So essentially returning it back as a data object so we can make use of it. So let's not touch that. And now that we've returned it back as a data object, we need to do something with it. So let's add it into our session storage. We could do it right here within that click event. So we can check to see if we've got a value for data. And if there is a value for data, we can store it into session storage. And we need to come up with a name. So this will just be person. And of course, you can call it whatever you want. Now, one important thing to note here is we need to still convert this data as JSON. So this is where JSON stringify comes in really useful. So let's stringify this data. You could do it this way, or you could maybe a better way to do it so we can actually see what it looks like. Now, either way will work. But this is in case you want to see what it looks like as a stringified version. So that's essentially our stringified version. We saw that earlier before. So string representation. So this is just one string. And then we know that we also saw earlier that we can parse that out and make use of it. So what's happened here is basically this data has been stored to the session storage. And next step is whenever the page loads, we want to pull that information out of our session storage. So there's a number of ways to catch the page load. I'm just going to do a window on load. And there are a number of different event triggers that you can trigger this. This is probably just the simplest one because for purposes of this lesson, I'm just trying to keep things as simple as possible. So whenever the window loads, we fire off a function. For this function, we need to check to see if our session storage has the value that we're looking for. So remember, we've only set it down here. So unless it's already been set, we're not going to find anything. And we don't want to try to parse through something that doesn't exist. So always use a condition there just to make sure it's actually there and it actually exists. And you can do a check to see if it's not equal to null. So basically that will see if it exists. And if it does exist, then let's reuse our variable data. And this time we're going to JSON parse, because remember, we're depositing it as a string value. So we need to retrieve that and essentially make it usable again. So that's what this is going to do. So basically we're depositing it as a string value, but we still want to use it as an object. So we have to parse it out as JSON, and this is going to make it useful again. And then of course, if we were depositing it back in, updating it, then we'd have to stringify it once again. So we could make our adjustments, make our changes, and then stringify it again. So session storage person, so we get that information out, and we're simply parsing that information out. And at this point, let's see what we've got here. So whenever the page reloads, we should get that stored information if it's stored. So let's try it out. So we reload it, and we do have some stored information. So it looks like this saved. We can update some of these values. And now see, again, we've deposited a brand new session storage value for person, and we refresh it, and we can pull that information back. So essentially, we're able to store a bunch of information in that one variable. And this is really useful, guaranteed that somewhere down the line, you're going to say, okay, well, I need to store this as one variable, and this is the way to do it. So very useful functionality here within this lesson. And of course, we're doing a very simplified exercise for this. So the next thing that we want to do, let's create a message. So a message that we can output into our page. It can go something like welcome. And now that we've got it back in our data format, we can just grab first, and we've got access to all of those variables. So this is really useful, really cool way to get that information back and of course make use of it. Welcome to the site. So that's our message, and last but not least, let's output that message. So document and get element by ID, and I have one called output, hopefully. Let me double check. So there it is. So let's dump that message into the inner HTML of that variable. So let's refresh, and there we go. So welcome to the site. And then of course, if I submit it and if I refresh it, it gets that new data input there. And of course, you can make use of this data, do whatever you want with it, update this exercise, and do something cool and interesting with what you've learned in the past few lessons. So go ahead, try it out for yourself, finish up your form, add it into the session storage. You can also save it as a cookie, and there's a number of other ways to save that information, that variable information, and then you can pull that back out and make use of it again as a JavaScript object.